Welcome back to the Whiskey and Wisdom podcast. I am one of the co-hosts, Tyler Yaw. I'm running solo today, and today I am with
David Raad, owner of 6 and 20 Distillery.
Thank you so much for having me in here. This place is beautiful. It looks really nice. So I appreciate you inviting me in.
Thank you. You caught us on the day. For those of you that didn't get to see the last 3 hours of the day, we had a small plumbing emergency we had to deal with. And so that's the joys of entrepreneurship, right?
Exactly.
You get to fix it all.
Yep. Business ownership. There's too many hats to wear every single day.
That's right. That's right.
Today was plumbing.
That's right. You get to see entropy in real life, things falling apart. Yeah.
Yep. That's awesome.
We got a cocktail, so cheers.
Exactly. Yeah. Cheers. Thank you. That's very good.
That's our favorite. That's my favorite. It's Manhattan.
Yeah.
It was Old Bunny wheat whiskey, which is an incredible whiskey to begin with, but it really pairs well in the Manhattan.
Yeah, I was going through the website, doing my due diligence before I came on and saw that your favorite was the Manhattan. And I asked what she was whipping up back there when she said that. And I was like, oh, gotta have it.
She probably looked at you thinking, what kind of question is that?
Right. Exactly. But yeah, so I guess the first question is, how did you get into distilling in the first place?
Yeah. So I worked overseas in East Africa.
Okay.
For businesses that wanted to get into emerging markets. And one of my clients was South African Breweries Miller Beer, SAB Miller.
Okay, yeah.
Based out of Johannesburg. We did some projects with them in East Africa. And in explaining brewing to your community partners, so if you build a brewery in a remote environment, in a kind of emerging market, you have to be very careful about communicating with the community that you move into about what to expect. What does it mean for the community there? Everyone thinks a brewery comes in, 1 million hectoliter brewery comes in,
right?
All our troubles are over. Well, it doesn't really work like that. Not today. It's a business like any other, but it has a great deal of opportunities tied to the business itself. So in being able to communicate properly with communities that they were entering, I had to be able to be fluent in how a brewery operates.
Okay.
What are the inputs? What are the outputs? What are the expectations? What's the jobs? What kind of skill sets are needed, et cetera. And that's just manufacturers, not even distribution or sales. And so in doing so, I had to be, again, fluent in how they operate. And so I had to go to the brew school in Johannesburg. So trained to be a brewer and then was able to communicate effectively kind of what was happening. And so I was living in East Africa with my wife at the time. We were living in Nairobi. We had our first child in 2009.
Okay.
And so we said, you know what, it's probably time to go home. Let's go back to Powdersville. So we left East Africa after about a decade there, left East Africa, and then moved back to South Carolina, to Greenville area.
Okay.
A place called Powdersville, not too far away. And then the state of South Carolina changed the laws to allow small distillers. They call it micro distilleries. It's under the criteria for it is fairly substantial. It can be a large distillery and still be a micro distillery. And I said, I can do that. I know how that works.
Right.
Back then there was a big push for moonshine.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It was the trend at the time. It was 2010. And I'm not a moonshine guy, so I'm not myself a fan. So I went back to school to perfect my understanding of alcohol, spirits manufacture. I went to the Siebel Institute. They have a substantial course on distillery operations and distilling.
That's neat.
And it was definitely worth the time and the energy. Brought that knowledge back, stood up the distillery, and we've been at it since.
Oh, that's awesome. And that was 2011 is when it got started?
2010.
Okay, awesome. And
it'll be our 14th.
That's amazing. Very good. Congratulations. I'm sure a lot of ups and downs along the way too, right?
Always. It's life, right?
You're right. Exactly. Yeah. And so, like I said, I was doing my due diligence, so I know where the 6 and 20 came from, but I think our viewers would love to hear the story because it's actually a really interesting one.
Sure. So when I was thinking of the name for the business, the business had been kind of fleshed out and formed out. The reality was that the name had to suit the purpose.
Right.
The name had to suit the purpose. And I, in reflection, in reflection, my sentiment was that I really love to make spirits. I love to share them. I love to learn about them. I love to teach people about them. I love to share them with friends, share them with new friends. And so I thought, you know what? This is about love. This is a story about love.
Yeah.
So the name has to reflect love. And there just so happened to be a love story that is local to South Carolina where we are.
Yeah.
And it was from before South Carolina was South Carolina. It was like 1704,
Right.
1705. And the story is about a Choctaw princess by the name of Issaquena. Issaquena lived not too far from here. This is the Savannah River Valley, and all of these tribes came together in this verdant and game heavy valley, like the Cherokee, which was the dominant tribe at the time, the
Right.
Choctaw, the Katichias, and others. And so Issaquena is in love with a frontier trader. His name is Allen Francis. Now, where we are today would have been the frontier. It would have been
Okay.
right
Yeah.
on the edge of the eastern settlements going into the frontier. They would have been to the west of us. And so by pure bad luck, Issaquena gets herself captured by the Cherokee, which was normal for the time. They would capture other tribes people and ransom them back. And
Right.
and that was the part of the barter process of the day, I guess, diplomacy of the day.
Right.
And so she found herself held in a Cherokee camp not too far from here.
Wow.
And while she's cooling her heels, waiting to be ransomed back to her family, she overhears them planning a raid on her boyfriend's trading post.
Oh, wow.
Well, she said, well, this will not do. I'm going to fix this. And she escapes. She jumps on a horse and lights out for his trading post. Now, she doesn't know where she is. She's in Cherokee country.
Right.
She's been taken hostage and held in their camp. But she knows generally which way to go. She can read, she can set her direction by the sun, she can set her direction by the stars, and she rides towards the trading post. Now, along the way, she needs to kind of get a bearing on how far she's gone so that she can understand when she gets there how far away she was. And she names, the legend has it, then she names the places that she passes on the way based on the distance from her escape.
Oh, yeah.
And those names are still in place today. Mile Creek, the town of 6 Mile, 12 Mile, 3 and 20 Creek, 6 and 20 River, all the way to the town of 96, which is where the post was, the trading post. She gets there just in time and warns them of the impending attack by the Cherokee. By pure luck, she gets there ahead of the war party, and they were, thanks to her advance warning, they were able to fend off the attack. Now, she and her boyfriend, they, after some bumps and bruises, they live happily ever after. But we like to say, if we were making spirits then, or she did a ride today, she would have called the 6 and 20 because along her path were 23 miles.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Choctaw. Now, I know you got to go run your ass to get to your elbow to say the whole thing.
Right.
But it's important for us to communicate a sense of where we're from and tie people back to it because we're distributed in 17, 18 states.
Right.
And so when I'm in New York or I'm in Texas or California and I'm talking about our brand, I love to take people back to a sense of where we're from. And that really, to me, that means a lot. And I enjoy it.
Yeah. That's awesome. So you're in 17, 18 states as well?
Correct.
That's really neat. There's a lot of distilleries that we've kind of stopped at and visited along the way, and a lot of them are very much just in the state where they're at, and a lot of that is around like legalities and stuff too. So was there a lot of loopholes and stuff you had to jump through?
Yeah. That's part of the challenges of owning a distillery is that every market you want to get into has obviously its own set of challenges, and not challenges that are necessarily something you've seen in a previous market. And that is the terrain of the marketplace is obviously different. The customers are obviously different. Their wants and needs are obviously different. But then fundamentally, the laws of that state are going to be different.
Right.
And so that will inhibit or put challenges to you in to make your product get on and get off the shelf.
Yeah.
It's expensive to get into new markets, and people or distilleries can be very reluctant to enter new markets because of what they don't understand and what they don't. Yeah.
there's something I kind of skipped over to get to that just because I didn't want to forget about that question. But so talking about the love story of where the brand came from, is what you're doing very much a labor of love for you?
Indeed. Indeed. It is. Every day it is. Every day it is. Now, one of the things that I love is problem solving. I don't know. There's something wrong with me. I enjoy problem solving. And just as I was hammering away on plumbing all day, solving problems, engaging the team to kind of get them to understand deductive reasoning and finding a
Right.
hidden leak somewhere, this problem solving is something that I enjoy. And so the distilling business is a puzzle box. Is a nonstop puzzle box, and it is indeed a labor of love. So if I love puzzle solving, if I love challenge, figuring out, then this is the job for you for sure. But it doesn't stop. There's no
Right.
stop solving problems today. It doesn't work.
No. So what I found out too, I was kind of learning the lay of the land in here that you're a previous ranger.
That's right.
Is that where the problem solving comes from?
Maybe. That's a good question. Certainly there's a lot of problems, but that was the never quit.
Right. Yeah.
Component
That's very
to it.
true.
Never stop. Never stop. Even if you're doing not much, just don't stop.
Yeah.
It's 90% mental, and the rest is attitude.
Exactly. So this industry, a little bit of the labor of love and then non-stop, never quit is
Never
probably
quit.
definitely
Never
where the 14 years later comes from.
That's right. That's right. And this is a job. This is honestly, really, it's a job for listeners. The answer is there. You just have to ask the right questions and listen. Sometimes when you're listening and you don't hear anything, that's hearing something.
True. Yeah.
Ugh, that's hearing something. So you really have to listen. You have to leave your pride at the door. You have to, do all these things. This humility had better be baked in because this isn't the place to learn it.
Right.
Yeah, it's challenging. It's challenging.
So with that being said, was there a situation when you were growing over these 14 years where you thought something was going to hit head on and it kind of flopped?
Yes. And there were other circumstances where I didn't expect to hit and they hit.
Oh, yeah.
And so, man plans and God laughs, right? So you never know. The thing is to keep trying. Don't stop. Just keep trying. Yeah, there were certainly things that I thought would do better and do different, and they just went in different directions. Very odd, but I'll take it. Even when something's a flop, it's valuable because you're learning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I try not to take for granted the failures.
Oh, yeah. That's a lot how the podcast got started too. There was many what were seemingly failures and what many people probably would have stopped at. It's just like, you know what, we can take this and turn it into something else and just kind of keep on moving for it. So yeah, I completely understand. But there's along with that too, I guess there's a lot of areas where there's a lot of like artistry involved too, right? Because when it comes to the distilling process, there's a million ways to, like, for instance, let's talk about the vodka.
Right.
There's a million ways to make vodka. You do it different.
Much different. And that's part of our fingerprint of our business is that I set out to do what I wanted to do to do this. I was intent on not reproducing something that's already been done.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that is lame, right?
Right.
It is flattery at best, laziness at worst, but you can do better by applying yourself and just thinking a little bit differently and doing what you like, making the product that you like. Maybe it'll be a commercial hit. Maybe it won't, but at least you've made something that you like and enjoyed and maybe perfected it to a degree that you really, really enjoy. Like the Old Money. I really liked it, wheat whiskey. To this day, maybe there's a few others that are making it kind of like we do, but we really stand apart for that. And it's flattering when I see other people making it as well, or 5 grain bourbon or things like that, or making or targeting a rye out of a fragrant grain like our like rye. It's flattering to presume that they are copying you, but in all reality, right? How many ideas are on God's green earth?
Right, true.
I can't claim to own all of them. People could materialize them out of thin air too. But it's nice to have a direction that is different, because then we have something to talk about with
Right.
people. We don't just have a, anodyne vodka that doesn't taste like anything, or we don't have
Right.
a bourbon that tastes like pain. We have different products that taste the way they do for a reason.
Yeah.
For a reason.
And so I heard the rye that you guys use has a specific story behind it as well too.
Wow, that was something that I cottoned on to when I came to understand it more. So the f- the rye is an interesting grain. It's a black seashore rye. It's grown on Edisto Island. It came to us by this organization called the Arc of Taste. And the South Carolina Arc of Taste is an organization that seeks to bring back organisms that were thought to be lost to posterity.
Oh wow.
So every year they'll grow a new row crop, maybe a new fruit, maybe a cereal grain or something like that, a variety that hasn't been seen for a while. Maybe it's a commercial hit, maybe it's a flop, but at least it's back in the mix and people can explore it.
Right.
It's something that you have to watch carefully and closely for, but it's very carefully accomplished. It's very carefully accomplished. There's geneticists from Clemson University that work on it. There's food historians from Clemson University work on it. So
Jeez.
there's a lot of brain power going into it. So it's flattering to be included into it and to get to see their product, right? To consume their
Right.
product. And so a few years ago, many years ago, they brought this black seashore rye back from seeming extinction. It's not a dominant variety of rye. So if you planted it next to a Abruzzi, the Abruzzi would just take over.
Oh yeah.
And so they grew a seed bank, handed out that seed bank to a number of different farmers. We got the first iteration of seed
Oh wow.
or rye that was grown, and maybe I got about 1,000, maybe 1,500 pounds of it, about 2 seed bins worth. Anyway, so when I got it, opened it up, and it was like, oh, peppercorn, pumpernickel. As soon
Oh
as I
wow.
opened
Yeah.
the bin. And of course, you get rye, you start making rye whiskey, right?
Yep.
And so that was off to a running gallop, and it was so rich when it was mashed. It was robust smelling. I mean, beautiful pumpernickel smells to it. It was amazing. And then when I distilled it, for a whiskey, it was so pepper forward. And it
Okay.
was really, really remarkable in the characteristics and the congeners that were being discovered by really carefully distilling it and getting our cuts just right. So I thought, maybe at that time, I wasn't making a vodka. I wasn't
Right.
making a vodka, and I was waiting for the right inspiration to come before I made a vodka. And we got, a vodka column. We could make it. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
I was waiting for the right inspiration. And so I thought, this is great. And so I took one of the mashes that I had going and said, I'm going to make a vodka out of this. I'm not going to make a whiskey, I'm going to make a vodka. And so I made a vodka out of it, and it was different. Really, really interesting in that the vodka that we've been accustomed to as consumers in America is
Right.
European style, tasteless, more or less odorless,
Yeah.
slides past your palate unless someone puts a little invert sugar in it, and then it's
Yeah.
a little bit creamier. But this was creamy to the palate. This was cocoa nib, caramel. I mean, really fascinating vodka. And I thought, this ultimately, I feel strongly about this. I'm ready to be wrong, and I probably will be. I won't be the first time in my life, but I'm ready to be wrong. I feel that as consumers start to mature, they've matured a great deal in the whiskey space.
Yeah.
Now they'll mature in the rum space and the tequila space. As soon as the market gets hold, starts to explore everything that's being offered to them, they'll settle into things that convey more than just the contents of the bottle.
Right. I think you're on the right path with that too, though, because even you can kind of see it in the opposite spectrum, right? With everyone exploring the non-alcoholic space. So if you're willing to go past even the alcohol part and just looking for something different out there in the marketplace, at some point it's going to hit
Indeed.
vodka, or at least I would think.
Yeah. Or at least a vodka that has a terroir.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the case here. It's a beautiful rye vodka not many people make a rye vodka. It's
And
hard to make, right? It's hard to make. The rye mash will expand in your kettle
okay.
and then try to escape into the column. So you have to
Oh,
you have to
interesting.
take measures to keep the foam under control. Lots of gluten in it. So it's a little bit of a harder product to manufacture. And so it's a little bit of a slower distillation. Now rye by
Mm.
weight will have less sugar in it to say corn or wheat.
Oh,
So your
okay.
yield's going to be lower per run. So you're dealing with a lot of negatives from the jump, a lot of excuses why not to do it,
Right.
why not to even explore in that direction. And so, if you have the patience, if you want to explore, if you want to make some mistakes, right? I'm ready to
Right.
make some mistakes. If you want to make some mistakes and learn something, then it was an interesting path for me to take.
Yeah. So we kind of brushed past the question I was going to ask you too, because after I was looking what you guys are making back there and the order of which it came out. So you guys kind of did the opposite, right? So typically it's the vodka and gins that are coming out of here first. You came out with the whiskey first.
Correct. Correct.
How did that happen? And kind of
Yeah.
how were you able to, I guess, as they would say in the business, pay the bills,
Pay the
right?
bills, indeed.
Before the whiskey came out.
Indeed. So the paying the bills part, really, the fundamental to it is minding your cash flow.
Yeah.
Is really just getting your expenses on the floor as low as you can get it. Really mind your cash flow carefully and make prudent steps. I had seen so many people in the beginning of their their distillery trajectory, presume that they were going to sell, 5,000 cases in the first year in rural North Carolina or wherever. The reality is quite different. And so your go-to-market path has to satisfy something that will at least get you some traction, get your products moving, draw some adherence to the brand. And so that means, again, doing something different, doing something bolder. For us, it was a product called Blue.
Okay.
So the product was a blend of 50-50 mix of a 6-year-old bourbon,
Mm.
and that we did not make, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
6-year-old bourbon and our new wheat whiskey together.
Oh, okay.
So we would take those in equal parts, marry them together, and then put them in a barrel for 6 months, 8 months.
Right.
Right. So you had a really interesting product that came that had that was really had some remarkable effects on your palate. Some new whiskey, but it was wheat whiskey, so it wasn't so edgy as
Right. Yeah.
bourbon that was new. And then you had a nice, mature 6-year-old bourbon that was really, really delicious. And then together, those things made and proofed up. It was really a wonderful product.
Yeah.
That lasted about 2 years. We were making that at the same time, making bourbon and laying it up.
Oh, okay.
Making
Yeah.
bourbon and aging whiskey and laying it up. They're probably in the back office. Maybe everyone's asleep in the back. Yeah, sounds like. All right. So what we did then was we also had our virgin wheat whiskey. It was a wheat whiskey, just white whiskey,
Oh, okay.
and it went well in the cocktail format.
Mm.
But as for new whiskeys, generally you don't want to go with a new bourbon. Obviously, you're
Right. Yeah.
experienced enough to know that. So the wheat whiskey was on the front edge of new whiskey, but definitely did not pursue the sentiment of moonshine.
Right.
Aged, deliberately unaged, kind of more aggressive product. We didn't do. And so that's what we did. We did the blue, we did the wheat whiskey to launch, and then rode those out for a couple of years, kept the cash
Right.
under control, focused on our local market, and then kind of increased our trajectory.
That's awesome. Yeah. So that's pretty quick growth then, going from just kind of doing it on your own for the first like 2 years or so, and then to now 12 years later from those first 2 being in 18 different states.
Right.
So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's hard, man. It's every day's a fight. Every market's a fight. It's not something that you can stop.
Right.
You can't say, I'm just going to take the month off and just let
Right.
Our retail partners, our wholesale partners, they need to, they need to be reminded while you're relevant. They need to be reminded of your product and its qualities.
Yeah.
And so, it just doesn't stop. Unfortunately, it doesn't stop.
Exactly. So outside of South Carolina, what's your next largest market?
Georgia's our next
Georgia.
market.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
California's picking up.
Oh, really? Okay, so you're all the way out in California?
Yeah, don't sleep on California. They love our Carolina cream.
Oh, that's
But
awesome.
it's a giant. I mean, when you consider South Carolina is our biggest market, our highest volume market. I think we might be the highest volume seller in the state.
Oh, wow.
Georgia's number 2, and then California is picking up fast. But when you consider the size of the market, I mean, Metro Atlanta in Georgia is larger than the South Carolina market.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Massive market. And it's a very competitive market. It's very and competitive market. What I see, other people see. So they're going to attack it.
Yep.
California, like one market in California is as big as all of Georgia. So
That's amazing.
if you're in
Yeah.
3, larger towns, or larger metro areas, that's a lot to work with.
Right.
That is a mammoth amount of stuff to work with. And so, you got to put it in perspective and put it in scale and be ready to act.
Right.
Packaging matters. You're not gonna service 18 markets with a hand-filled line. It's got to be a good back line, or you're not gonna make it.
Right.
You're gonna have 10 people on the back line, and they're gonna be screaming at you for making them do the work.
True. So just because a lot of our listeners are in North Carolina, are you in North Carolina yet?
We are. We're on special order in North Carolina for some odd reason. North Carolina, once our product, they do consume a lot of our product.
Yeah.
But they insist that we are a special order, which is very unusual.
That is unusual.
Considering how long we've been selling in North Carolina, how much we've been selling in North Carolina. Might be my number 4 state. Anyway, they pay a premium for a special order product for me. I don't mind. But the consumers take it. Now, because North Carolina will not let us get into their regular ABC system,
Mm-hmm.
and the regular bailment ABC system, we say we're not going to apply any marketing dollars to your market.
Okay, yeah.
We're not gonna ourselves invest in your retail system if you won't take the time to invest in us as a brand, even though we have a decade of track record together.
Right.
Which is mind-boggling. But truth be told, the control states, North Carolina, Virginia, are easily the worst markets to deal with.
Yeah.
The most difficult, most expensive, least performing, underserving the public. It's a remarkable circumstance in that states maintain or able to. The public allows the state to maintain these systems. Knowing what I know about the 3-tier system in general, and then state specifically. If I lived in a state that had a 3-tier state, I would probably picket, the ABC office every day with, go pound sand, go get stuff. This is the worst circumstance. And just to put it in perspective, how inefficient and how underserving it is to the public.
Mm-hmm.
You will have the lowest variety of products available.
Yep.
You will have the highest retail prices imaginable. Take, for example, our Carolina cream, our most popular product in South Carolina. The MSRP is $19.99. You can find it for $21.99.
Yeah.
At a store that may seek to expand their margins. In North Carolina, you'll see it for $32.99.
Oh, wow.
In Virginia, you'll see it for $36.99.
That's incredible.
Remarkable. And it's something to behold.
Yeah. So you did mention the bourbon cream. So I heard that's pretty good too. So I was actually at a restaurant before I came here. I saw they had your spirits up there. And the bartender behind the bar was like, "Hey, what do you know about 6 and 20?" And she was like, "Well, actually, we're supposed to be having a tour there in a couple weeks," and like went through us. And she was like, but let me tell you, I went there. They have amazing cocktails, and their bourbon cream is to die for.
That's right.
So I know I had to ask about the bourbon cream.
That's right. That's our big prize product. Did much better than I thought it would.
Right. Yeah.
Right. It is, and it was interesting in development. Approaching the product from a distiller's perspective was the wrong perspective. It's a food product.
Yeah.
Attack it like it's a food because it's real cream.
Right.
And that was interesting. I had some experience with cream from my youth. I worked at a cooperative extension farm all summer, every summer when I was a kid.
Oh, wow.
And that they had a dairy there. So I came to
Oh,
understand
okay.
dairy operations and creameries and stuff like that. And so that little bit of knowledge that I had milking cows twice a day was effective in helping
Very
this
nice.
product the way it is.
So when I was also looking at the product that you have available right now, because I understand the rye was very popular and flew off the shelves.
Indeed. Yeah, we'll do a bottling and it's gone immediately.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's a good problem to have. But between the Old Money and the 5 grain, what are the two main differences between those two?
So when you think of the individual grains that make up a whiskey, now the whiskeys, when we do a tasting, for example, let me back up. I'm going to climb up to 30,000 feet.
Yeah.
The linear thinker, you don't have to bear with me.
No
So
problem.
when I look at whiskeys from a 30,000 foot perspective, the individual flavors, the palate experience, the mouthfeel, the finish, everything, these are all determined by the variety of grains and the not just the variety of grains, but the ratios of grains together. So the makeup of the mash bill, that will determine the characteristics, the primary characteristics of the spirit, not the total. I mean, the barrel finish is going to be 50%. So the grain makeup and the congeners that are captured from the fermentation process and then isolated during distillation are going to give you the flavors that you're experiencing.
Okay.
So the ratios of grains will determine the different congeners that you'll get. How they're captured in distillation is critical. And then the strength at which the spirit is conveyed to the customer will determine which congeners stand above others. Some are more effective at lower proof, some are more effective at higher.
Oh, okay.
Or more pronounced, I should say, more pronounced.
Interesting.
As a consequence. Or 5-grain bourbon, because it has 5 grains, it's going to have real panoply of congeners that you can expect. So it is going to be a very complex spirit on your palate. It's going to have a ton of flavors on your palate, which if I'm a whiskey consumer and I'm a bourbon consumer and I want something that's different, well, this is a very complex spirit, right? It's not an MGP derived spirit where it's very linear or I'm very accustomed to it. So or 5 grains going to be more complex. It's going to be proofed up. So those complexities are going to stand out apart from one another. Conversely, or Old Money, our wheat whiskey, is made with just malt and wheat, soft red winter wheat. And so when you have it, it's going to be a lot softer, a lot more honey bunches of oats, a lot of the tannins from the barrel are going to pop a little bit, but not be too astringent like Scotch, but you're still going to get them there because it's a delicate whiskey.
Right.
And so it's going to have some nice graham crackery taste to it without the sharpness.
Yeah.
And so interestingly enough, the wheat flavor, some of the congeners that you're going to find from the wheat distillation are isolated, are going to make the flavor adhere or stay with you longer. So the finish is going to be tremendously long, even if it's a lower proof.
Right.
It's going to be high in your palate. It's going to be long on your palate. It's going to linger for a long time. The 5-grain bourbon isn't going to linger nearly as long, even though it's a higher proof, as the wheat whiskey.
Interesting.
That's something that I enjoy a great deal. Normally, we'll sample people with the product and say, try the wheat whiskey first, try the bourbon next to it. And they'll say, oh, well, I enjoyed them both, but I can still taste the wheat whiskey after I've had the bourbon. Like, yes.
Right.
Yeah, it'll stay with you.
That's even something I noticed with the Manhattan too. I was like, I can just feel it taste longer.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't realize there was, or what the science was behind it,
And
rather.
but these are some of the effects that we seek to can
Right.
hopefully I can get it. I can speak to enough people to have that effect noted, right? Say, oh, I get what you're trying to accomplish here. This is
Right.
great. This is great. Sometimes they'll stumble into it themselves, although it's not often the case. But it's where your art meets science.
Right. So when you were coming up with the cocktail menu, was that you, or do you have a bar
Oh,
manager that takes care of it?
that entirely our bar team.
Okay.
Entirely our bar team. I enjoy creative people creating.
Yeah.
Right. And so in a creative space where I get to create, so you want to foster creativity with the rest of your team members, whether it's on our food menu or the bar menu. We really encourage that creativity, and not just in the distilled products we make, but if you look at our simple syrups and our cocktail editions
Right.
and all the components to it, we'll make them all here. So it's fascinating reductions and simple syrups that they'll
Right.
make and infusions that they'll make. It's pretty cool to see.
That was the first thing I noticed too, because that's always the first thing I look at when I look at behind a bar is like, what is made in house, and I was like, everything is made in house here. I was like, there is nothing that you buy at a store in here, which is amazing.
Yeah, they'll even pre-cook the bacon,
Oh wow.
right, for the BLTs,
Yeah.
and it's not bacon, it's bacon, like a quarter
Oh,
of
it's
an inch thick
legit.
bacon.
Yeah.
So they got that stuff fried in here. I'm like, I gotta get out
I
of
need
here.
it.
I'm gonna eat all this bacon if I stick around.
That's awesome.
But it again, it is something that if you wanna foster something different, you have to foster creativity, and you have to let people make mistakes and make things that I'm now. Truth be told, there's some things where I'll say, "I'm not doing
Right.
that.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. Not my savoir faire."
Right.
But that is the extremely rare exception. And that usually involves raw.
Right.
eggs or
Yeah.
something.
True. So unfortunately my co-host wasn't able to make it today. I will ask his famous last or second to last question, and that is, how would you define success?
Ooh. Okay. You know, there are in my estimation so many easy definitions for success.
Right.
Variety, financial achievement, recognition from your peers. That's not notoriety, but recognition from
Right.
peers, recognition from your subordinates, recognition from your community. There's so many components for definition for success. But for me individually,
Yeah.
I have in my mind a set point for success for the varied things that I'm trying to do now. Another way that I'm a very linear person, it's shameful to consider. I don't have a global definition of success. My definition of success is always task oriented. Task oriented.
Yeah.
And that is principally because this is jumping back to the first question of I like problem solving.
Right.
And so all of the problems that I have to deal with don't have one specific final conclusion of,
Right.
the curtain falls and there it is. I'll always have problems and challenges I love to get my teeth into. And so consequently, my definition of success will be incremental understanding. Maybe I solved the problem, maybe I didn't, but I
Right.
came to understand it. Well, maybe I didn't come to understand it. That's a failure, right?
Right.
Maybe
Yeah.
I came to understand it and I'm not equipped to solve that challenge, but I figured out who could and who would. So we got to
Exactly,
success
yeah.
eventually. Maybe I figured it out and maybe I attacked it and got it on the first try and I was a roaring, raging success. So you get my point. It is for me, individual task, achievement, understanding, comprehension, maybe overcoming them, maybe succeeding, maybe blowing out the competition, and those things was competition. I should have considered behind that. I don't look as my success. I try not to keep a metric against other people as a measurement of success.
Right.
Me is mostly introverted, more internally oriented. Does that make any sense?
It does, yeah. Actually, that's a really good way of putting it too, just because that's probably the way that I have always seen success too, but I've never really had a way of putting into words. So I think that makes a lot of sense too. Like, for instance, our podcast, we purposely don't do too many advertisers on it because it's a labor of love for us that we enjoy doing as a passion project. And we don't want anyone coming into us and being like, hey, I know you're not going to get a lot of views on doing this thing, so we don't want you to do that if we want to interview that person.
Right.
So like I have my metric for success is completely different for this than what my day job is, right? So like that's completely different metric of success. So I think you put in perfect words from what I've always felt too, but never knew how to explain it. So I appreciate that.
It's the little battles in life.
Right. And then, so one of my final questions is, since we look forward, looking at success, looking backwards, if you were to tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Oh, it's so easy. Hindsight is so easy.
Right.
Oh man. In all the things that we do, all the projects that we undertake, we often discount what we can do, what we can summon forth as individuals. We often feel the need to have people with us to try to break a trail.
Right.
The reality is that you don't need that. You don't need that. You can advance on your own, succeed and fail, but at least you can do it on your own, and you can be responsible to yourself. And then as you progress, if you need to bring in individuals to help you move forward, then that's the best
Right.
course. But to start the expedition with people that, assuming that you need to have them with you is a mistake.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. Is that you always hear the popular quote, right? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. But I think you kind of bring up a good point. So in order to start fast, to get to where you need to go, probably better to go ahead and kind of cut the trail. And then when you realize there are some hurdles and obstacles, to start bringing in those other horsemen.
That's from my experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been enlightening for me. Now, this is, by the way, I don't want to take credit as this is an original idea. I read this 15 years ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I read this and I was like, discount.
All right.
It was true then. It's true now.
Yeah. Makes sense. I really appreciate it. We are coming up on our time and want to be respectful of your time as well too. So thank you so much for inviting me in here and letting us sit down for a while to hear a little bit more about your story. And I'll get some more footage around here so everyone can see what it looks like. And I look forward to tasting a few more of your spirits.
Wonderful. Thank you again. Thanks for
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate
Cheers,
it. Cheers.